Do you ever find yourself wondering if a director's astrological sign affects the films they choose to make or the stories they're attracted to? No? Well, I do. Welcome to Cinema Astrology, where every month I'll be analyzing a filmmaker of that season's zodiac sign. We're going to start with Aries directors because it's the first sign of the zodiac wheel. And I chose 5 directors and 5 films to dissect. And I tried to be diverse in my choices, so I tried to choose someone of different races, different time periods, and genders, but I can't deny that it was hard to find a lot of women in general in film. So I chose Andrea Arnold, Quentin Tarantino, Roy Andersson, Peter Greenaway, and Charles Burnett. So I'm gonna be dissecting 5 films they made, and I chose their most popular movies or the films they're most known for. And I'm gonna base my analysis more so on the stories and the films themselves versus the personal lives and traits of those directors, because I feel like that's not like really that interesting. I just kind of want to see if their artistic perspectives and their values and what they want to depict show any signs of them being an Aries. I specifically chose directors, Aries directors, that directed and wrote their movies, because I feel like when you're that into your filmmaking where you're writing your stories, that would show more of your personality. That might sound really psycho to a lot of people, but as someone whose 2 primary interests in life are astrology and cinema, it just makes a lot of sense for me. So please don't judge me too much. Can you tell what sign I am? And of course, this is not like a legitimate study and it's not factual. It's just more so my analysis, my opinions. If you think it's Delulu, cool, but you know, as something that has been studied by humans since Mesopotamia, I think it's pretty valid. So let's begin. So I know Rams more personally than other people do because I was raised by one. People that don't know anything about Aries and are just like clicking this video, maybe I'm gonna make you into astrology, hopefully I can convert people. Here are some facts about Aries. They're a cardinal sign that kicks off not only the spring season, but the entire zodiac wheel. They're ruled by Sun and Mars. Mars is the Roman god of war, which associates with Aries' drive, passion, and competitive nature. Aries is a fire sign. They're ruled by the head, because all signs are ruled by a certain body part, and they often literally walk head first into the most challenging situations. Their top 5 personality traits would be courageousness, act first, think later, little to no personal anxiety because of this, competitive, very honest, like they will just tell you straight up and it's like, okay, I'm gonna go cry myself to sleep now. Driven, they will get to what they want to. If you're in their way, they're gonna use those ram horns to push you away. They're very generous though. So if they're one of your friends, then you're in for a lot of advice, even if you're not asking for it. When they get into something, they tend to get into something. Like they will self-teach, join a class, go to the gym every day. Like they have a routine, and because they have that routine, you will see them evolve.
But now it's funny though, because I mean, I don't actually consider that like pressure in any negative sense or anything like that. It's like, I mean,
you don't feel like you've created a bar that you have to meet every time, or is that just where you think?
Oh no, that's just where I belong. That's where I belong. All right.
All right.
All right. You know, no. I want to have. I have high expectations for myself, and I don't want to do slough off work and everything. And I want to live up there. That's where the minute if I start living down here for like 4 films, then I quit.
Weaknesses: impatient, moody. And the moodiness, a lot of people like to compare to being babies because they're the first sign of the zodiac wheel. So it's like they're babies. Short-tempered, impulsive, and my favorite, aggressive, because this aggressiveness will be bought up in every single director and movie I talk about. It's gonna get annoying. Like take a shot every time I say violence in this video. And lastly, I'm gonna break down their archetypes/symbolisms. The ram is their primary symbol, deeply rooted in the sign's elemental and modal associations. The ram is powerful, assertive creature that embodies Arian's drive to lead, to conquer, and to forge ahead. The warrior archetype. Aries is often associated with the archetype of the warrior, a figure who is courageous, decisive, and driven to triumph over obstacles. This warrior-like energy is reflected in the Arian's tendency to approach life as a battle to be won, with a fierce determination to emerge victorious. The pioneer and trailblazer, which I'm gonna bring this word up a little too much. Aries is closely linked to the archetype of the pioneer and trailblazer. Arians are driven to be first, to explore the unknown, and to blaze a path for others to follow, recognized as bold pioneers, leaders, and initiators. So the first director I started with was Quentin Tarantino, and honestly, I'd only seen Pulp Fiction because I was kind of always scared of his movies, knowing that they're very violent. I'm not that into a lot of violence, so this is my first time watching Kill Bill. I'm not gonna lie, like it's my 5th time watching it. So I noticed a lot of Ariesness in this movie, and I'm just gonna name the traits and visuals, characteristics I noticed that I just think exude full-blown Aries. So I'm gonna list you my observations right now. Opening shot of this film is Uma Thurman beat, like bloody face, looks like she's about to die, and she's in a wedding dress. The next scene is her fighting Vernita Green's character. So this film dives headfirst into the story, the gore, the violence. This is instant Aries headfirst energy. Quentin is in no way trying to catfish me into thinking this film is going to be anything it is not, nor is there subtlety to ease me into the violence that is going to commence. It's just violence from the get-go, and it's not like a dramatic build-up to it. You're just boom, bloody Uma Thurman. Then there's a line that the bride says.
It's mercy, compassion, and forgiveness I lack, not rationality.
This is a very Aryan thing for the bride to say. She no longer feels those things towards her circumstances, aka the revenge and fight she's gonna be having with Bill in this series, as she should, but she can still proclaim herself as rational, and she herself justifies her own actions. She does not hesitate to chop off Lucy Liu's head. Like, for her, she deserved it. She had it coming for her. Like, you shouldn't have tried to kill me on my wedding, bitch. Sorry. Everyone in this movie seems to be having an outburst every other minute. There isn't room to breathe. This serves a silent, unapologetic way without any mercy, which is giving me Aries to the maximum. Oh, you're uncomfortable? You don't like seeing blood? Okay, I'm gonna use 450 gallons of blood then. Deal with it.
Fortunately, that's the story of revenge. Revenge is messy. It never works out the way you want it.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan. Get it?
So for each director, I'm gonna choose one scene out of context that I just think exudes why they're an Aries. So in this movie, there's a moment where the bride is flying to Tokyo and she's sitting on the plane with a list that says death list. You know, a lot of us girlies make lists about who we like, our celebrity crushes, I don't know, like your top 5 favorite songs of the year, films of the year. No, it's who she's gonna kill. A lot of us girlies have like a Starbucks cup, a Stanley cup, I don't know, just something normal that you'd put on a plane. No, the bride has a samurai sword, just casually there. No one questions it either. Like, I think that's very Aries. They get by. They get by with their tendencies, and they're more rich than you are too, on top of it all, so hey. So let's get into Quentin Tarantino's trademarks that of course apply to Kill Bill, and how they're Aryan. So Steve Buscemi said famously about Tarantino's movies that they both burst with energy and are focused at the same time. To me, this embodies Aries' 2 brain cells. Extremely energetic, ready to face a situation head first, but their determinedness and high focus make it work out in their favor in the end. It kind of comes off as contradicting, like you think maybe because like they might cross the line, which sometimes they do, but even when they cross the line, like it's still somehow, they bask in that chaos and they make it work. So I honestly don't have to explain much about Tarantino to you, because I feel like when someone thinks of cinema, they think of who's the first director you're gonna start watching when you wanna watch movies. It's Tarantino. And here's the thing with Aries, they're known to be trailblazers and pioneers. They pave the way and we follow, and that's not a coincidence. They're the first sign in the Zodiac. So, and they're ruled by their head, which means head first. No thoughts, head first. And Quentin, because he has that approach, because he says, I will use 400 gallons of blood, I will have brains exposed, he did it. And because he did it, there are literal words named after him. In 2018, Oxford English Dictionary added the term Tarantino-esque into its collection and described Tarantino-esque films as characterized by graphic and stylized violence, non-linear storylines, cineliterate references, satirical themes, and sharp dialogue. Other Aries-like aspects of Kill Bill is unconventional storytelling, which Kill Bill is told through chapters. That's not typical for a movie. A character coolly talks through an intense situation, either delaying the occurrence of violence or avoiding it through resolution. honestly, when I talk to an Aries, even though when, like, they're not mad, I kind of feel like they might burst at me, even if it's like a happy burst, it's about a kill me burst. Tarantino's movies, like the characters, because they're so quiet, at least like the dialogue they speak is usually like a necessary thing they have to say, right? So when they're not, I feel like they might pounce at me, like even if it's not the bride with the samurai sword. So that is kind of how I feel towards Aries. There's always like this tension underlying within them, even if it's a playful tension.
What's going on here? How's it going, man? How are you? What's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here? Put that down. What's going on here? What are you doing? What are you doing? Can you not talk to me? Just for the... What are you doing? Hey, don't do that. Don't do that again.
What do all these trademarks have in common? They're bold, daring, unconventional, and all the stories follow characters that are tempered. But you know why these characters end up winning? Because they're willing to cross lines others would not. They're not overly emotional, like they're not gonna confess their love before the other person does and save them, like Mr. Darcy coming to Elizabeth, you know, because he knows he has to say something. It's not subtle, it's not like Eyes, Carol, glancing. I'm naming a bunch of romance movies because that's all I think about. And it's not through IQ either, like they're not outsmarting each other. No, with an Aries, with Tarantino, the reason his characters win is because they're angry. They're willing to slice the head. Even if his antagonists are psycho, the reason the protagonist wins is because they're more psycho. They're willing to go train to a point where they can earn the samurai sword being made for them custom, you know? So as we see from Quentin's quotes / notable moments from his interviews, he's very unapologetic about his filmmaking. He feels very strongly about what he's drawn to, and I'll put in some clips to prove how strongly he feels.
Are you so sure that there's no link between enjoying movie violence and enjoying real violence? I'm going to tell you why I'm so sure. Don't ask me a question like that. I'm not biting. I refuse your question. Why? Because I refuse your question. I'm not your slave and you're not my master. You can't make me dance to your tune. I'm not a monkey. I can't make you answer anything. I'm asking you interesting questions. And I'm saying I refuse. Okay, well, I was just asking you why. That's fine. But you see, Jamie Foxx has said we can't turn our back and say that violence in films. Well, then you should talk to Jamie Foxx. Then you should talk to Jamie Foxx about that. And I think he's actually here, so you can. I'd love to, but I mean, it's interesting that you have a different view, and I'm just trying to explore that. And I don't want to, because I'm here to sell my movie. This is a commercial for the movie. Make no mistake. Well, you have views. Yeah. You don't want to talk about anything serious. I don't want to talk about what you want to talk about. I don't want to talk about the implications of violence. I haven't wanted. The reason I don't want to talk about it is because I said everything I have to say about it. If anyone cares what I have to say about it, they can Google me and they can look for 20 years what I have to say about it. I haven't changed my opinion one iota. No, but you haven't fleshed it out. It's not my job to flesh it out. No, it's my job to try and ask you to. And I'm shutting your butt down. And that's entirely your...
Last quote I'm going to bring up from Tarantino, because it's going to apply to the next director I discuss, is him and his writing process. So he says, "My head is a sponge." SpongeBob ass. "I listen to what everyone says. I watch little idiosyncratic behavior. People tell me a joke and I remember it. People tell me an interesting story in their life and I remember it. When I go and write my new characters, my pen is like an antenna. It gets that information, and all of a sudden, these characters come out more or less fully formed. I don't write their dialogue, I get them talking to each other." Okay. As you can see, it's a bit confident, which I respect, but maybe I'm jealous I don't have it. Based on the sponge quote, let's bring in another unapologetic Aries director who also uses their surroundings as inspiration, Andrea Arnold. So you may be asking, how does a British lady with a fringe haircut compare to Quentin Tarantino? Well, I had to make up something, so I'm gonna tell you what I found between them. So to me, Q and A, Quentin and Andrea, are two sides of the same coin. Q's movies are very Hollywood, super done up. But in that done up, he uses his budget and filmmaking tools to embrace violence to the highest form of cinema. Arnold is very separate from Hollywood, where she doesn't even use traditional film equipment and instead prefers a more handheld and organic approach because she does not like orchestrating her scenes to that degree. She even finds most of her actors on the streets. In fact, the film I'm going to talk about today is Fish Tank. She found the protagonist from Fish Tank, Mia, in a train station while she was fighting with her boyfriend. How is that not Aries? Like, you're just walking, you hear someone shouting, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go ask them to be in a movie. Like, I don't know, it's just, I get scared when someone's shouting out in the public. I'm not inspired by anger, but Andrea's antenna went up. Her sponge was ready to soak To add to Andrea's unconventionality, she applies the people she meets, personalities, into the characters she writes to maintain her unorthodox yet realistic approach. So let's compare the two leads from Fish Tank and Kill Bill, because trust me, they have similarities. So what drew these two Aries to these girlies that want to kill everybody? Let's examine their similarities. Just by looking at the bride and Mia, you get a very clear sense that you should not mess with these two. I would not even look into their eyes, honestly. I just feel like they would immediately like feel something from me that they'd want to fight, even though I'm not trying to cause any drama. The bride is more calculated with her approach and has a plan, giving Papa Quintin, versus Mia acts on instinct, giving Mama Andrea, but they will both kill you. Regardless. They're also both quiet and more expressive with their physicality over verbal dialogue. Like, they're not gonna say, oh, how dare you, you upset me, I wanna break up with you. They're gonna punch you in the face. They're both very passionate and dedicated to their primary interests. Mia is into dancing, and the bride is being a badass bitch. But again, these interests, hobbies, traits, strengths that they have are not expressed in a cutesy, inspiring way. It's very ruthless and fuck you if you get in my way kind of energy. Last but not least, both of them escape their limited/violent worlds and seek a better life. They were aware that what they were surrounded by was ultimately toxic and only fed that temporal, angry side of their characters. So they're aware that they could go beyond that, but it takes, you know, the movie to get there, which I know it's hero's journey, but just stay with me. Okay. Let's examine the Ariesness of Fish Tank by itself without any Kill Bill comparisons. Immediately, I did not plan this, but the first two Aries movies I watched start with a girl, the protagonist, instigating a fight, and then going full-blown head first. This time Mia legit uses her head.
About ugly, you skanky little faggot.
Aries, head, conspiracy. Arnold, like Tarantino, is showing her style from the get-go and does not care if the audience is uncomfortable with what she's chosen to capture. So she's not shying away from telling you that this is going to be about a very angry teenage girl. So if you're into it, keep watching. The main mood of this movie, just like Kill Bill, anger, violence, madness. Hello Mars, the planet that rules Aries. The planet of war. I mean, say less, say less. So then Mia sees a horse chained up to a post, and the next minute she's packing a hammer to go break it free. She's not thinking. So Aries, because they're the head first, they tend to not think before they do. They act and then think about what happens after. So clearly, if I saw a horse chained and I was concerned for it, I don't know, like I'd call maybe an animal help center. No, she gets a hammer and she goes to let it loose. So as she's trying to let it loose, clearly this horse has owners, so a pack of teenage boys are now trying to beat her up, but thankfully she escapes. But yeah, 2 fights in like the matter of 10 minutes in this movie. Speaking of Aries fearlessness, there's a moment where Michael Fassbender takes them to a lake and he's asking the mom and sister and Mia to go into the water. Everyone's scared to go, except for Mia. She just goes into the water. Boom. Aries, hello. Regardless of all this primitive behavior I've explained, she still has a hobby that she's deeply devoted to and maintains her sense of development because she dances every single day. So she's self-driven. Though there's consequences to her impulsive actions, she still has this consistent dancing going on and she's good at it. So the scene that I think is very Aries in this movie is when Mia gets in trouble for messing with Michael Fassbender's daughter. So I'm gonna go into some Andrea Arnold quotes / her filmmaking style that applies to Fish Tank 2 and explain how it's Ariesy and also compares to Quintin. She said, mainly it's real life around that inspires me. I see someone on the bus and I want to write about them. But among filmmakers, I suppose Tarkovsky has something spiritual about him. His book, Sculpting in Time, is on my bedside table. Fellow Aries inspo? Ooh, only the real ones know. So, like Quintin, her approach to stories is being like a sponge to her reality. But, one more time, what I find interesting is you can choose to empathize to positive aspects of reality, highlighting conversations or people that evoke romance, melancholy, satire, comedy. I know that there are no films about peace, like there always has to be conflict. I swear, with Aries, it's always peepholes and places I myself did not consider delving into, because I like to put romantic glasses on. I don't want to see that part. At least I do sometimes, but that's not what I would immerse myself into as an artist, because it would just make me feel really uncomfortable and sad. So, it's typically bleak, violent, intense, and honestly, all these Aries movies I watched, at the end of them, I wanted to like watch La La Land, you know, I wanted to see some color, some love, some music, so yeah. So Andrea also, when it comes to this lack of color, lack of hope, lack of light, she had to say this: I wonder whether my bleakometer is set differently than other people's. I have such passion for what I do that I can't see it as bleak. When people use that word grim or gritty, I just think, oh come on, look at it a bit deeper. My films don't give you an easy ride. I can see that. The sense I get is that people have a quite physical experience with them. They feel afterwards that they've really been through something. Yeah, I felt that way after this movie, so you did it, girl. Another Aryan thing that I find about Andrea's filmmaking is that she gives total control to her actors when it comes to their characters. Like, she wants the actors to see themselves in who they're playing, to a point where she gives the actors the scripts on the day they're filming. So the characters / the people playing the characters do not know what their character is gonna go through. So if you get a script saying you're gonna die that day, that's when you're finding out. So she wants to see like the raw, real reaction to her actors, and I think that that's very Aries. It's almost like she's like setting something on fire and she's like, ooh, let me see how much it's gonna burn. So it sounds like Andrea is also unconventional, angry, but feels very strongly about these traits that she exudes in her films, and she doesn't care if you're not into it, right? So another director that I found who also uses inspiration around them and is also very unapologetically themselves and angry is Charles Burnett. So before I get into Killer of Sheep by Charles Burnett, I'm gonna talk a bit about Burnett himself because he's very underrated. I'd never heard of him before this video, but his contribution to cinema should be acknowledged a lot more than it is at the moment. He was named as one of America's very best filmmaker by Chicago Tribune, and the nation's least known great filmmaker and most gifted black director. He even received an Academy Honorary Award from the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences as an influential film pioneer who has chronicled the lives of Black Americans with eloquence and insight. Pioneer? Am I smelling an Aries archetype? I don't know. I am. So the movie I watched, Killer of Sheep, was his master thesis project during his time at UCLA that depicted family life in Watts, which was a largely black neighborhood in South Los Angeles. He made the film during times of turbulent social events for the black community. 1967 and 1968 were vital in establishing the UCLA filmmaking movement known as the Black Independent Movement, in which Burnett was highly involved. These African and African American filmmakers had strong relevance to the politics and culture of the 1960s, yet stayed true to the history of their people. Their characters shifted from middle class to working class to highlight the tension caused by class conflict within African American families. The independent writers and directors strayed away from the mainstream and won critical approval for remaining faithful to African American history. Corinne McMullen perhaps phrases it most accurately when she states that Killer of Sheep is full of anger but without hate. Again, Aries movie, even though it's not an obvious trait in this film, anger is the most prevalent. Besides being a trail... The stars are on my side tonight. Outside of the fact that he's a trailblazer in the Black independent cinema movement, Charles Burnett's style is also very distinct. He tries to mimic a documentary, and you, when you're watching it, like, could believe that it is a documentary, but it's very meticulously made so that it looks and feels like one. So I like to call this chaos that is framed organically, mirroring Andrea's approach, where though it appears to be completely natural, like he just found some girl on the street and decided to film her getting into fights for 2 hours, it's actually written and directed. Charles explained his style. I wanted to have a sort of documentary look to it. Adding to that, I didn't want to have a setup, shots and backlighting, all this sort of thing, and have, you know, all the proper cuts and angles and things like that. It was like you shot a documentary, you get to take what you get and move on. Even though it was scripted, I want to give the illusion that I just set the camera up and captured what was there. That wasn't the case at all. Unconventional filmmaking. When asked what his favorite image was from Killer of Sheep, Charles Burnett had what he likes to call a disturbing answer. Every time I see it, I cringe. There's a shot of these kids jumping between 3-story buildings, and you'll see it from the bottom up, looking up at these kids flying over the rooftops and stuff. And it's a gap of like 3 or 4 feet between the next building, the jumping from one building to the next. At the time I was doing that, it never occurred to me that what would happen if those kids fell, you know? I just wanted to capture, but I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have allowed that to happen. And I think that every time I see it, that would have been the end of them, the repercussions of it. I showed you how, you know, how insensitive you can be when you're behind the camera. You allow anything to happen and you can stand back and look at it at a distance, even when it's happening. So you learn a lot about yourself. You know how selfish you are, how selfish you can be, and that's one of those concerns. This is super Aries to me because he was going head first, project first. If this kid falls as I'm filming, I'll think about it after, I'll pay his medical bills. But right now, I'm gonna capture it because it looks really good and it's gonna make my movie. But okay, if I was in that scenario, not saying I'm a better person or anything, but I would definitely be so scared of the kids falling that I wouldn't even shoot that scene. So that's why I'm not a pioneer, Charles. You know how Quentin's very passionate about violence and how he has to happen in all his movies? He won't answer the question anymore of why he has it in his movies. Burnett is very outspoken about why he thinks that cinema is no longer artistic, which contradicts what he was taught in UCLA. And he's very outspoken about this because, of course, he loves cinema. He says, a tragedy of a lot of filmmakers who want to make a film that reflects the wide range of narratives that take place every day in this country, but don't get the chance is because it's all about Hollywood, about making money and so forth. When we got into film school, it wasn't about making money. It was about being factual and about trying to make a difference and make people progressive in a way. We need more people to make all kinds of films. Good films, politically effective films. This reminds me of Andrea, because the characters and directing style just show who they are as they are. There's no direct dialogue trying to manipulate me, the viewer and audience, to feel a certain way. These directors clearly empathize with them, but they're not using obvious tools like style, soundtrack, color palette, dialogue, like everybody else usually does, for that to be obvious. That minimalistic approach is their strength. Everything is so stripped down and is what it is, that's what invites us to be as observant as them. It's the Aries. As you notice, I haven't talked a lot about the film's plot because it's primarily a series of vignettes that follows a family in Watts. And again, unconventional, non-linear. Quintin is chapters. Andrea is shaking the camera around an angry British girl. Charles is vignettes. And now we're going to a different director who is also unconventional and uses vignettes, the Swedish gem of a man, Roy Andersson. So my fourth movie was about Endlessness by Roy Andersson, which, like Arnold and Burnett, depended heavily on imagery over dialogue, inviting us to observe what was on the screen. This is just one of 3 films he has that are completely composed of vignettes. What makes him different from Burnett and Arnold is that he mixes surrealism and his inspiration from paintings that give his films a very distinct visual style. So though he's non-linear like those directors I just mentioned, he is very meticulous and plans all his scenes out. He's at the forefront of composing everything we see on screen. So in that way, I would say he's more like Tarantino because he's so meticulous. It can take him up to 4 years to make one of his movies. And if you see the behind the scenes, it's like everything's an illusion because he takes time to make each layer of a set. And every character in his movies are also white. It's not only because he likes to make them look like that, it's to show that everyone's the same. It's like he captures the everyday man, which you wouldn't get that from watching his movies, but also, again, Charles Burnett, everyday people that he was raised around. Andrea Arnold, everyday people that she encounters in England. Roy Andersson, the bleak Swedish society he's always surrounded by. Roy Andersson also doesn't use professional actors, so he has like this meticulousness when making the worlds and having his own distinct sense of visuals, but he has a spunk of casting people off the street just like Andrea. This quest for authenticity means that Andersson works primarily with non-professional actors, people he spots out and about at the patrol station or in a bar. So because he's trying to capture like an essence of his worldview, he was a painter first and a director second. So instead of making a conventional storyboard, Andersson uses paintings. So if you see what his storyboards look like, they're just a series of paintings. So we have unprofessional actors, paintings of storyboards, and meticulous set design. So to me, it's like what Steve Buscemi was saying, the two sides of a coin. Chaos instinct that's stylized and meticulous, yet focused in filmmaking. If chaos with order does not scream Aries to you, then I don't know what does. But a lot of people think that his sense of humor is very bleak and they don't really find it funny. That's not really his perspective. To him, it's the we're all human message, and he's trying to make us remember that we shouldn't let this disconnection and, you know, capitalism, our pursuit for independence get in that way. Without truth, that will be no humor. My kind of humor is dependent on truth, naked, revealed. That's why I don't, nowadays, especially use shadows in the lighting. My pictures are shadowless. Why? Because there's no possibility to hide in the picture where there is no shadow. A shadow can help you hide, but in my pictures, you can't hide, you are naked. I want to purify the pictures of our lives, our existence. The interviewer says that might contradict what people have assumed of you, that you're an existentialist, without much hope for the human condition. But he says that he's not a pessimist at all. So to me, it's interesting how people view Andrea Arnold's work as bleak, even though it's not her primary intention. As a general audience, when I watched both their movies, I did feel primarily bleak from watching them, and as someone who's, you know, surrounded by a lot of Aries, they do tend to kind of have like that brash, straightforward, no censor, it is what it is view in life, right? So their humor is kind of like that. It's kind of like you get punched in the arm and there's a bruise there and you're kind of like, oh, that kind of hurt, but they're laughing at you. I swear I wasn't physically abused by my family. It's just very metaphorical. I thought that was very sweet. And again, when Aries speak, they tend to, you know, like try to uplift you, bring you to their view of life, their high, their what drives them, because they're always driven. So I think even if Andersson's movies don't particularly exude that, I just like the fact that that's his intention. He says, I'm trying to show we have to care for the little we have left. I want to show the vulnerability and the weakness we carry. And sometimes I do get kind of tired of their sense of just always like being this righteous justice pioneer. Let's make this pathway. But I think we all need it. It's like kind of like having that strict teacher that would hit me with the stick, but I know they want me to get an A, so it's fine. So as you saw from these clips about Endlessness and Andersson, he's very niche. I cannot think of one director who even comes close to his visual styles. Maybe Andersson's composition does, Wes Anderson's composition, but it looks like you sucked all the color, life, and cavity sweetness out of Wes Andersson, who's a Taurus. I'm coming for you. But to me, I'm not sure if this is like solidified by the world yet, but that makes him a pioneer for me because, again, I don't see that anywhere else. So now if you take the idea of being inspired by paintings, violence and anger, and being a pioneer, finally we've reached our last filmmaker who was definitely a finale for me, Peter Greenaway. The cook, the thief, his wife, and her lover follow Albert and Georgina Spica. Albert is a very angry and rich gangster who goes to this restaurant he owns every single day with his very prestigious, high fashion wife, Georgina. And every time they go to this restaurant, Georgina is just silent, suffering, because Albert Spica is just constantly yelling, causing a scene, but everyone has to deal with him because he's such a powerful force in this world. Like, the film starts with Albert torturing a man outside the restaurant, and it entails with poo, piss, you name it, like every substance you don't want to have on your body or face. Again, does not shy away from telling me that this is going to be an Aries showing the worst parts of humanity. in a not subtle way. So like Kill Bill, I would say that The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover is a revenge story because we tend to get more and more on Georgina's side. She starts to cheat on Albert with one of the reoccurring customers at the restaurant, and you definitely want her to cheat. Eventually, this cheating gets to her because Albert finds out and he gets his revenge on her. So then you're rooting for her to get her revenge on him. And I thought Quintin was freaky deaky with his kills, with his style, with all that. No. Peter Greenaway is showing you what freaky deaky violence is. For example, the way Albert kills the lover is by shoving pages from his favorite book down his throat. And I didn't mention, but this man is a bookstore keeper. Like his entire life, his passion, his love are books. So he dies through that. Then when this one girl tells him that his wife is cheating on him, he puts a fork straight up into her cheek. And again, like they're in a public, prestigious restaurant, so everyone saw that, but they have to deal with it. And lastly, the most famous part of this movie, I would say, and what kind of took me off guard, because I have to say this scene appeared in my dreams a day before I watched this movie, no joke. No joke. Georgina, after finding her lover's dead body, decides to ask the cook of the restaurant that Albert owns to cook him and feed him to Albert. So I thought the cook was gonna incorporate the lover's body into a dish, and then they were gonna say, psych, you're eating the lover, Albert. You're a cannibal now. I underestimated Aries, baby. Georgina straight up sits Albert down and pulls up a plate that's longer than this desk, cause it's just Albert cooked with no, I think there's dressing on him, I don't know, but you see them toes, you see his face, like it's like a pig with an apple in its mouth. And she makes him eat it in front of her. And after he takes a bite, she calls him a cannibal and shoots him in the face. If you show this to an astrologer out of context and said, which sign do you think made this scene? I swear to God, the only right answer is Aries. The level of nerve that just takes to do and to actually execute it well, have riz throughout it all, and just be like, as you do it, is pure Aries. Like no one else could pull that off. Outside of the movie just being completely unhinged, we have to talk about Peter Greenway himself, and I highly recommend his lecture, Cinema is Dead. I'm gonna link it below because it honestly altered my brain chemistry in terms of how I view cinema as a whole. So pioneers. So he succeeds in making all of us feel uncomfortable, and he doesn't care if you feel uncomfortable. He thinks that the point of cinema is to make us, out of our comfort zones. And again, it's not like other directors do. Like not all directors have the nerve and gall to cook a human in their film and show all that. Like, I'm sorry, I can't get over that. Besides believing that cinema died the day the remote control was invented, I'm gonna put like clips of him explaining a bit more of what that means, because I just think you need to hear his British accent saying it. It just makes it a lot more believable and sound legitimate than me saying it.
I am, I suppose, deeply disenchanted by the whole notion of cinema. In fact, I don't think, let me be really provocative at the very start, since I hope to continue my provocations, for me to say this, that let's think maybe the most biggest event, I suppose, in Orthodox cinema in the last 15 years is Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. And you know, and I know, that these aren't films, these are pieces of illustrated text.
He also thinks that the freedom is missing in cinema now because of how much people are involved, producers, writers, like you have a whole team behind you. And Charles Burnett actually felt the exact same way because, as we were talking about him, he wasn't used to this level of outside influence, engagement, priority of money when he went to school. So Greenaway also thinks that if you're an artist, if you're making cinema, let it be by the Beatles. Like, you don't need to have other people telling you, oh, this, that. No, it's his vision, it's his story. He questions why we're such softies now and how no one is actually trying to make something that's innovative. We made cinema as an art form stagnant. There hasn't been progression and instead a death. Greenaway is the epitome of someone who's a pioneer and is trying to push for a new cinematic language. We've had like a lot of filmmakers talk crap about modern cinema and say like it's, you know, just for money. Like it's not a new statement, but he goes out of his way to try to push that and actually like make something that completely questions our perspective.
The need, I think, then, and you must surely agree with this, even if you don't want to apply it to cinema, that it's absolutely important to keep reinventing, reinventing, reinventing. If you stand still, you rapidly get left behind.
And to me, it's not a coincidence that Francis Ford Coppola, another very innovative filmmaker who I didn't review in this video, is also an Aries. I mean, Apocalypse Now is like one of the most production hell movies ever made, and I feel like only an Aries could do something like that and actually get away with it and pull through with it. There's a whole documentary about the making of that film. And most recently, we have to talk about Megalopolis. There is a scene where Adam Driver's character talks to the audience. Like, someone would go up and talk to him. Again, only an Aries would have the nerve to do something like that, and it actually sort of worked. Sort of, not really, but I mean, that could literally start a movement where people have interactive film scenes in theaters. I'm just saying. You're asking, did I genuinely find all these common threads in these movies, or am I just really digging? To be honest, I don't think I was. Like, all these movies I watched that I explained were in the order I watched them in, and I genuinely felt so much anger, ambition, drive, intensity, but brashness in all of them that, I don't know, it just reminded me of my dad, I guess, who's an Aries. So I don't think I'm delusional, y'all, but maybe if you think I am, keep it to yourself. Thank you for watching and for listening to my delusions for probably 40 minutes if I'm able to shorten this video, I'm not sure. I'm going to make this a series on this channel because, again, I feel like I'm very well versed in these two subjects and I want to explore every single sign because I swear to God, it's never been done before. Like, there's a lot of content and, you know, articles, posts that recommend films based on your zodiac sign. But because I tend to be proud of like all directors that are my sign, this idea just came forth. So next month, I'm gonna do Taurus because Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac wheel. So if you're into Wes Anderson, Sofia Coppola, Orson Welles, then you should probably watch my next video. Please leave a comment of your thoughts. I'm very curious and I look forward to seeing you next time. Toodaloo.
Oh, really? Okay, I'd like to see you walk down the street and get attacked by some kids who've just seen your movie.
But you thought, but see, Jan, you're all messed up because you're talking about real life.
Oh,
and I'm
I see.
talking
And kids
about
at
the
12,
movies. You got to get it straight. Now, if you want to talk about the movies, we'll talk about the movies.
Okay, and
if you want
kids
to
at
talk
12
about real life,
can tell
we'll
the
talk about real life.
Kids at 12 can tell the difference. You tell their parents that, Quentin.
Hey,
I
saw movies when I was a kid, all right? I saw all the movies that I'm basing my movies on are the movies I saw as a kid, and yes, kids go to a movie theater, they can tell the difference. Maybe you couldn't when you were a kid, but I could.